6 a.m. The wind was still asleep, but snow had been falling all night. Every time winter covered the Sawtooth Mountains, the world around me turned into a slow-motion film. Each movement slowed, each sound muffled beneath a thick white blanket of silence. My name is Reed Harper, 48 years old, single, the lone caretaker of a cabin halfway up the mountain. I used to be a forest ranger. Now, I'm just a man trying not to turn to stone. After an accident that took my wife 5 years ago, I withdrew from the world. No phone, internet, or bills, except the one loneliness charges, and it always collects. That morning, like every morning, I opened the cabin door to shovel snow off the porch. But before I could reach for the shovel, I froze. Just 4 steps away stood a red fox, small and thin, her fur clumped with snow and mud. Her eyes were wide, her ears pinned back, legs trembling. But it wasn't her condition that made me hold my breath. It was what she was dragging behind her, gently, by the mouth. A smaller creature, wrapped in paler fur, limp as a snow-soaked rag. A fox kit, injured. That much was clear. The mother fox looked at me. She didn't come closer, she didn't flee either. She just stared, as if waiting. I'd never seen anything like it. In nearly 2 decades of living beside this forest, I'd known foxes to be the most skittish of all creatures. Just the sound of a door creaking was enough to send them vanishing like mist in the morning sun. But not today. Today, this fox had decided not to run. I didn't dare move quickly. I crouched slowly, opened the door wider, and extended my hand, palm up, a motion I hadn't used since helping a trapped deer with broken legs. The mother fox flinched slightly, then stepped forward. Just 1 step, but enough to make me swallow hard. She placed her kit down, gently, delicately, as if setting a glass figurine onto the frozen stone. Then she stepped back. She didn't bolt, she didn't snarl, she simply sat and waited. I stepped outside, crouched down, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The kit lay curled, back legs stiff, a patch of black blood oozing from one hip. I wrapped my coat around its tiny frame and lifted it. It was light as fallen snow, no resistance, no sound. I turned toward the door. The mother fox never looked away. She sat soaked, shivering, but unmoving. I looked back at her. I don't know if I said it aloud or just in my head, but I whispered, "I'll do my best. I can't promise anything, but I'll try." And then I closed the door. Inside the wooden cabin, I gently placed the kit into an old wicker basket I used to store books. I covered it with a thin wool blanket and pulled my chair close to the wood stove, stirring the fire until the flames licked higher. The room began to warm, but the tiny body in the basket remained cold, stone cold. No movement, no sound. I examined the wound. Dried blood had crusted around the left hip. A patch of fur was torn clean off. I pressed gently. There was a twitch, faint but real. A reflex maybe, or maybe life. I grabbed a clean rag, soaked it in warm water, and carefully cleaned the blood. The injury was deep, but not fatal. At least I wanted to believe that. I used hydrogen peroxide and gauze from the first aid kit I normally used for my clumsy knife cuts. When I laid the final bandage across the wound, my hands were still shaking. Not from fear, but from something unfamiliar, the feeling of being trusted. I glanced toward the window. She was still there, the mother fox, sitting like a stone sculpture in the blizzard, unmoved and unmoving. No howling, no scratching, no panic, just watching and waiting. I placed a bowl of warm water and a spoonful of diluted milk near the kit's mouth. At first, there was nothing, but then one ear twitched, just a flick, but it was enough. I whispered more to myself than anything. Hang in there, little one. Your mom's still out there waiting. Night fell. I dozed off beside the fire, one hand resting near the basket. In my flickering dreams, I saw her eyes, the mother fox's eyes. They weren't the eyes of a wild animal. They were a mother's eyes. That's the only way to describe it. She didn't beg, she didn't panic, she just waited with hope. Around midnight, I woke with a start to the faintest rustle. The kit had shifted. Still not opening its eyes, but its chest was rising and falling, weak but steadier than before. I checked the bandage, still in place. I refreshed the water and added a bit of honey to the milk. I didn't sleep again that night, not because I was worried, but because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel empty. The next morning, when I stepped onto the porch, I didn't see her. My heart sank. But then, just a few yards away beneath the snow-laden pine, a reddish blur rose into view. She had moved closer, more cautious, more careful, but still there, still waiting. I went back inside. The kit's eyes were open now, one slow blink. I exhaled deeply. One blink was all I needed. 3 days after I bandaged him, the little fox could finally lift his head. His eyes stayed open longer, blinking slowly whenever I came near. He didn't flinch, didn't scratch, didn't cry out. He just lay there, quietly, like a stray sunbeam caught in the middle of winter. I named him Fen. Not to make him a pet, I knew better than that. But sometimes giving something a name helps you pray for it. Helps you hope. Fen started eating thin porridge. I made it with oats and bone broth and stirred in a drop of honey. He licked it slowly, bit by bit, his little tongue working with careful rhythm. Each time he swallowed, a little weight lifted from my chest. And the mother? She was still there, day and night, under that old pine tree, like a red shadow that never left the edge of my land. Every morning I saw new paw prints in the snow. Some mornings I'd find a line of field mice, neatly placed, intact, right on my porch, as if she were leaving gifts. Her way of saying thank you is in the language of the wild. I began leaving a bowl of water out for her. Sometimes I'd find it tipped over but never broken. There was no mess. Everything between us felt like an unspoken ritual, a quiet pact between two creatures, one offering a second chance, the other offering trust. One weekend evening, just as the sun dipped behind the ridgeline, I brought Fen out to the porch, wrapped in an old wool scarf. He could raise his head now, sniff the breeze, lick the cold air off his lips like he was tasting the melting snow on the wind. Then, from the edge of the trees, came a sound, barely audible, a scraping, claws brushing bark. I looked up, and there she was, the mother, standing there, not blinking, not snarling, just watching. I don't know if she recognized Fen, but Fen recognized her. His ears perked, his little body leaned forward. And then, a sound, a rasping little cheep, hoarse but clear. I knelt, setting Fen on the porch floor just a step away from me. No one moved. The air froze. Then the mother stepped forward, not running, not afraid, just one deliberate step, like she was saying, "I've seen enough. I trust you." And for some reason I can't explain, I started crying. No words, no real reason. Just a soft crack in something inside me that had been frozen solid for far too long. That night, for the first time, Fen left the basket and walked on his own to the fire. And when I looked out the window, she was gone. But I knew she hadn't gone far. She was still there, still watching, still believing. Time passed like breath on a cold window, thin, fragile, but always leaving a trace. Just over a week after his injury, Fen was walking freely around the cabin. No more limping, only a slight lift in his left leg whenever he climbed the wooden steps. I left the door slightly ajar each morning, and he began venturing out onto the porch, sniffing the air, ears twitching at falling leaves or the distant call of an owl. At first, he would return quickly, like a child afraid of losing sight of home. But slowly, he lingered longer. His eyes drifted toward the woods, the place that called to something older than memory, older than language, the place where he belonged. I saw it, and I knew. The day was coming. One rare, clear morning, after a windy night had swept the snow off the porch, I opened the door and saw tracks. Not one, not two, three. 3 sets of small V-shaped fox prints circling the front of the cabin. One of them trailed a long tail mark, like someone had laid there through the cold night waiting. I scanned the tree line. Nothing moved. But I knew they had come back. Maybe Fenn's kin, maybe members of his mother's pack, maybe just the wild, calling its own home. Strangely, I didn't feel lost. I felt peace. That night, Fenn didn't sleep in his basket. He curled beside the door, eyes open, ears alert. I played a few rough notes on my old guitar. He didn't stir. When I blew out the lamp, I heard it. A low, soft cry from him, not loud but clear. And then a reply from the edge of the woods. In that moment, I knew I couldn't keep him anymore, and I shouldn't try. The next morning, I didn't call Fenn. I didn't say goodbye. I just opened the door, made a cup of tea, and sat on the porch as I always did. Fenn stepped out quietly and stood beside me. A breeze drifted through, rustling pine needles and the last clinging frost. And then he looked at me, not with fear, not with sadness, just a look as if he was letting me memorize him. I knelt and touched his back. "It's time, little one." Fenn turned and walked away. No rush, no hesitation. When he reached the tree line, another fox emerged from the brush. Then a second, then a third. They moved toward him. One nuzzle, a quick tail flick, and then, together, they vanished into the trees. Fenn in the middle, smaller but steadier, like something once broken had finally been mended. I sat there for a long time, tea cold in my hand. I didn't feel sadness. What I felt was space, not emptiness, not like the years before, but a space that could be filled again. A silence that felt open, like thawed ground ready for new seeds. Winter left the way it always does, quietly, without warning. One morning, I opened the cabin door and realized the snow was gone. Or rather, the spring wind had come. Beneath the old pine tree, a few wildflowers had pushed through the thawed ground, as if the heart of the earth had begun to beat again after months of sleep. Fenn had been gone for nearly 3 weeks. The cabin felt emptier than I expected. Each morning, I still found myself checking the little basket by the stove, once a warm nest for a shivering ball of fur. Each evening, I still cracked the door open an inch, as if waiting for something nameless to return. But nothing came, until this morning. I was brewing tea when I heard it. A faint clink outside, like something light had landed on the wooden porch. I opened the door and froze. Right there, placed squarely on the top step, was a small arc of twigs woven into a perfect ring. Inside the ring was a dried pine cone, and tucked beside it, 2 red fox hairs, carefully laid across each other like they'd been placed by hand. I don't believe in magic. I used to be a ranger, a man of science, of instinct. But that morning, with the breeze gentle and the sky clear, I knew. This was not an accident, not random, not careless. It was a gift. I sat on the porch step, that delicate offering in my hands, and looked out toward the trees. Nothing moved, no flashes of red, no sound, just sunlight slipping through new leaves, painting freckles of light onto the forest floor. But I felt it. That gaze again, that quiet presence, not watching to threaten, but watching to thank. From that day on, I received a gift every season. In summer, 3 perfectly ripe raspberries nestled between 2 silver leaves. In autumn, a tiger-colored stone, smooth and worn, as if carried in someone's mouth for miles. And in the winter that followed, I saw Fen. He didn't climb the steps, he just stood under the pine, 10 paces away. Bigger now. His coat was full and radiant. His eyes, amber, wild and steady, locked onto mine without blinking. Beside him was the mother. I didn't move, I didn't speak, I just nodded, and they nodded back, in their way, a glance, a tail twitch. And then they turned, melting into the trees once more, leaving behind in me not a wound, but a softness, and something eternal. Sometimes people ask me why I still live out here, alone, high in the mountains. They wonder why I don't move back to town, to the noise, the lights, the comfort of human voices, and warm company. I usually just smile and say, because some things only happen when you're quiet enough to hear them. The truth is, I once buried myself in silence to escape. But after that winter, the winter of the mother fox and Fen, I started to understand. Silence can also be a way of holding on, of keeping memories, of preserving trust, of protecting the things that need no words, yet speak louder than any language. I still leave a bit of food at the base of the old pine every season. Not because I think they need it, but because I need to believe they're still out there. Sometimes I find faint paw prints in the morning snow. Sometimes I hear a soft rustle below the window after midnight. But I don't check. I don't shine a light. I don't look. Because now I know. Some presences don't need to be seen to be real. You feel them with trust. Fen, the fragile little fox who once slept in a basket by my fire, is surely grown by now. Maybe he has a family of his own. Maybe he's long gone from this forest. But I believe, deep in his bones, he remembers the hands that once kept him warm through his first winter. And I remember her eyes, the mother fox. The way she laid her child at my feet was like a final gift, a silent wager between 2 worlds. On the old bookshelf, I still keep the small twig ring, with 2 red fox hairs inside. There's no label, no caption. But every time my eyes fall on it, I remember, once, in the space between snow and fire, between wilderness and man, I was trusted. And that trust saved me. They came in silence. And they left in silence. But they left behind something that never goes away. The belief that love doesn't have to look the same. To reach us just the same.